Fishing trips anywhere, anytime. FishingBooker.com. Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
HBO's The Last of Us returns with a new season on Max. Every path has a price. 5 years after the events of the first season, Joel and Ellie are drawn into conflict with each other in a world even more dangerous than the one they left behind. CNN calls The Last of Us exquisite, fully realized, and worthy of the hype. The new season of the HBO original series, The Last of Us, premieres April 13th on Max. And listen to the official The Last of Us podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about UFOs, or what is it, UAPs, aliens, the whole thing. We're committed, right? We're all in. My big question is why, right? Why is all this coming out? I mean, I know it's been over the last couple of years, not in the last week or two, but why are we now a little more open when our government has been always like so hush hush? Yeah. So you go back like way back, right? 1896, they saw airships over California. That's kind of crazy. I mean, that's you because then it's a big deal, right?
Right. There's not a whole lot of stuff flying around up there.
Right. 1947, Roswell, right? Obviously a big, you think aliens, you think of Roswell. In Phoenix in 97, over 1,000 people saw this like big V-shaped lights up in the sky. The mayor was there and he denied it at first. And then later he's like, oh yeah, no, I saw it. So he's kind of a douchey liar, but you know how it is. 2004, we had the Tic Tac incident, right? You know, where the Navy had. Now, like, so all that time we'd been like, no, there's nothing here. You guys are just stupid. You all imagined it. Mass hallucination. It was the way the horizon and the lights were glimmering off my car. And, who knows? You were all just dumb. And then it all started to turn like around 2017. The New York Times put a big article out and they were like, we keep ignoring it. And we're worried about the safety of like pilots and things like that. We keep pretending there's nothing there, but there's shit flying around everywhere. Harvard, right around then, got on board and created the Galileo Project, where they actually started, talking to. They created a study group to study UAPs. 2020, the Navy released those 3 videos from the fighters. That was a big thing. And then we started having the hearings. Now, the hearings didn't really lead to much, and we're going to talk about that. But they said, now we're going to have transparency and accountability. Remember there was let's talk about that for a minute. Transparency and accountability. So all this time, right, we had, what did they have? I think 4 different hearings between 22 and 23 about UAPs.
Yeah.
And all of them, they were like, we're going to release stuff. We're going to, no more secrets. We're going to have it come out. Trump was going to expose it. Hillary was like, if you elect me, I'm going to expose it. We're going to get all this stuff. And basically all we got from all those hearings was, there are things out there that we don't know. We're not sure what they were. That was the only official acknowledgement from the government.
Right.
Now, you're going to tell me about that David Grush guy. But, from the government, from an official stance, all we got was, there's things we don't know what they are. That's So that's kind of shady. What's your take on that?
Well, do you remember that right before the election, we did a show on all the drones or whatever it was flying over New Jersey and Virginia. And Trump was like, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is when I get elected.
And then he was like, oh, it's just drones.
Yeah, just drones. It's fine. I saw some pictures of some weird stuff, dude. And you're telling me that it's drones, then the government has some weird shit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So what if this is all like a big shell game? You know what I mean? What if this is all like a big, oh yeah, maybe there are aliens. We don't know what it is. And it's just like high-tech new, government weapons.
Yeah.
And they're just, I mean, is it possible that our government would lie to us?
No, Kevin, come on. I mean, that's it. Were they out there looking for something? Yeah, I don't know. So, well, that's one of the things, like where this whole trust comes into play. So let's go back to that. Let's talk about, so France, China, Russia, a lot of countries in Africa all have had programs where they're studying UFOs and, unexplained aerial phenomena. They haven't necessarily been like, oh, there's aliens or whatever, but there's weird shit going on that doesn't make any sense. And they haven't been like playing with people, and that's wonder, like, why is our government, hey, let's just mess with you. Now, 2023, we had that David Grush testimony, and he testified. He said crazy things. Like, he said that he called them non-human biologics.
Right.
You would know these as aliens, right? And that we had secret programs to reverse engineer UFOs and like we were doing things. He came out and was like, oh, all this stuff. Now, I don't know if you guys remember him. He was, he's the one who came like before Congress and was like, yeah, look, I'm going to come clean because nobody else is. And that's, but yeah, he had credibility. He was a former intelligence officer, and he worked for a lot of different, companies throughout, in the Department of Defense and like that, and with NASA and all kinds of stuff.
Right. He's legitimate high-ranking intelligence.
And he had access to this information.
Right.
But it was weird that he's like all on his own. Like everybody else is like, we don't know you, buddy. And
yeah. And they did try and do like a bit of discrediting of him. Like his medical records his military medical records were leaked.
Yeah.
By who? Like, for what reason? Why would anyone do that? Like, you're risking your entire career if you do something like that. So why did they do it?
It's weird because the VA, like, they'll just drop your shit anywhere. Oh, we left a laptop with everybody's information.
Right. Everybody's social security number.
I was in the coffee shop. I got distracted. There was a pretty girl. And I just left my laptop there. And the password was already entered and it was just open, or maybe the password was the word password. It's one of those.
Yeah.
I think that when I was in the military, so it's a million years ago, and they were like, 80% of all government passwords are the word password.
Yeah.
And this was back like 2000, 2001.
Yeah. If that doesn't work, try admin or administrator. And it'll get right through.
Right through. Because that's the secret code, there's a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4. We do that. But
yep.
I don't. So, that's the thing. Like, it's weird that, I'd have to go back to how much science has been hurt because we choose to ignore this stuff. Like, could we have learned a lot of cool things? Like, now, one of the ones that comes to mind is like Tesla, right?
Right.
He talked about, what did he say? Like, he used communications that were out of this world and from extraordinary sources. And I think he didn't want to be perceived as crazy. Well, he was perceived as crazy, but but I gotta say, results,
he was insane.
Results talk,
Exactly. He was obviously came up with a lot of stuff that we're still like inventing today that are like kind of still catching up with stuff that he was doing then.
Yeah.
You know?
Like Roswell was in 47 and supposedly, I mean, you watch like all the conspiracy videos and things on UFOs, and they say that a lot of the information from reverse engineering that crash was like leaked out. And that's where like they say that transistors came from, a lot of different like circuit stuff, pretty much the whole circuit board thing came from the 47 Roswell thing. And like supposedly our government and like DARPA type things. I don't think DARPA was around then in that form. But those type of people were leaking the stuff to like Bell Labs and all these things to make America progress is kind of the theory, right? It is what they hint at. Now, there have been some crazy things. Like, do you remember that? How do you even say it, Kevin? Umamu or what was the big?
I'm not even going to try and say that
big stone. I think
cigar shaped.
Yeah, that big like rock.
Right. So that was an interstellar object, right? That came from outside of this solar system and left off in a different direction. You know, after it picked up speed from the sun. Yeah. Now, I don't know if it was picking up speed based on gravity alone. Other people said that was not the case, that there was some other whatever, outside dude. I don't understand that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, like, and they also like, I read all kinds of things of as it gets closer to the sun and the warmer air, the gas changes and it changes speed. And like, there was all kinds of, I guess there was another video. I was looking for that one. And there was one I didn't even remember that was, They showed some like big black spot in front of the sun, and then it looked like it was powering up from the sun,
sucking up energy. Yeah, that was a wild video.
The energy, and they were like, "Oh no, that just happens. It just kind of
normal,
like out stuff."
And I'm not a physicist. I don't know. That shit looks wild to me, though.
Right. That's one of those things you want to ask those smart guys. Who is it? I don't know, the guys that are always on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you who I asked.
Who'd you ask?
Well, last night I went and saw Giorgio Tsoukalos. You know who I'm talking about?
He's from the History Channel. He's the crazy hair guy.
He's the crazy dude with the ancient aliens,
yeah.
Right? With the tan and the hair that's like 6 inches sticking straight off his head.
Yeah,
well, he gave a talk last night recently, and I got to go over there and listen to his crazy ass. And he was definitely talking about the all sorts of stuff. Now he was saying that he thinks that the government isn't releasing any of this information intentionally. He thinks that this stuff is like getting out.
Okay.
Despite the government's efforts.
Damage control. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Yes.
I feel like there's got to be more that you got out of this. There
are 3 guys. There were 4 guys there, and it was a lot of crazy conspiracy stuff. It was all they do the ancient stuff, so it was all about pyramids and all that stuff. But then they got into at the end, they got into a little bit about all the newer stuff that's coming out, and
nice.
They had a bunch of videos about a bunch of videos of different encounters that were recorded. Then the Navy videos that got out, that were, it didn't get out. They were released, it was crazy. These guys are all out of their fucking minds, and it kind of discredits the whole thing just because they're so insane.
That's one of the things. Yeah. Like I like this show, the Y-Files, right?
Yeah.
And that guy's got a YouTube channel. He does like deep dives in everything, and he's really pretty cool. And he like inspires me to research all kinds of stuff and go into, crazy town and whatever. But, and also if I'm searching out something, he's usually got it. But the whole thing is his show, he has like a little fish bowl with a like fake fish that talks.
Yeah.
And they call it heckle fish. And the thing is, he's like, yeah, I have that here. Cause otherwise, if I don't act like I'm a little bit crazy,
Yeah.
The government's going to come after me and I don't want to get shot for exposing stuff. Whereas if you're like, oh no, it's tinfoil hat, it's crazy.
Right.
You know?
It's crazy stuff. Yeah.
Then
well,
you don't
I mean,
need to worry.
there's a lot of stuff on the Y-Files that are like, stretch credulity, but he seems to be like open about like that fact that it is a little bit crazy. Right. But I mean, he's putting out a lot of videos, man. So there's a lot of fun stuff there.
A lot of stuff.
It is one of my favorite YouTube channels.
And yeah, no, I enjoy it. Anyway, so there's a bunch of like reasons why you should be terrified of UFOs. And one of the things is, so there was an article. Well, there were a couple. So there was an article on the Jerusalem Post that had UFOs once took control of Russian ICBMs. Now, you can look up this article. Like I just snatched it up. It's from 2023, August 1st, 2023. But basically, they had a colonel that they're quoting, and he talks about how a ship hovered over a nuclear missile facility or ICBM facility, and basically activated all the missiles where they started to be brought up, entered the launch codes, everything. They were like freaking out, like, hey, we're not doing this. And then it all just stopped and the ship took off and everything went back to normal. And people kind of took that as the aliens were showing us who's in charge, and that's kind of a creepy idea. In 1967 at Malmstrom Air Force Base, 10, they said ICMs. Now that's intercontinental missiles, but is that not ballistic? Like, I don't know why the B is not there. Did the guy writing the article not? I don't know, but became disabled at the same time. The base was reporting they had like red lights and something hovering over the base.
Right.
So they had that going on. You can search that out. That's definitely all over the internet. In 76, an Iranian pilot tried to actually shoot down a UFO and like engaged it. And when he did, everything in his plane, the controls just stopped responding. Like it didn't shut it down where he crashed or anything, but nothing worked or did anything. And it just maintained, like, basically, once again, it was kind of like they were in control, And so in the past, you're always like, nobody reports stuff because you get reported as like, oh, well, that guy's crazy, or you actually lose your job, right? If you come forward, they even like shut down American Airlines pilots and things just for being like, yeah, I saw one. And I mean, things like that, right? You need to be careful about what you say. Why the fear, Kevin? Do you have any theories of why the government would shut this down?
Yeah, I think that they've been pushing this conspiracy theory, crazy bullshit for a long time. And I think it started with a lot of the stuff that was coming out of Area 51. People were going out there and recording things and like trying to sneak in and all sorts of stuff. It became like a big public event. You know what I mean? The secret military base. And I think that they were using that area to test aircraft.
I think all day. But when
they were like, yeah, no, UFOs. It was UFOs. And they were spreading that shit secretly. But then, coming up with that phrase, conspiracy theorist, and like, making it out that only crazy people believe in aliens. If you saw an alien while you were flying an aircraft, that means you're insane and you shouldn't be in charge of flying aircrafts anymore.
Exactly.
I think they were kind of pushing this as a way to discredit people. And I mean, you can discredit people all you want, but when everybody's seeing them over the East Coast, you can't just discredit every single person that saw it. You know, when everybody sees them, unless everybody is insane, except for the people that are trying to cover things up, then it seems a little weird.
Right. No, I don't know. It's hard because, and kind of the flip side, like you hinted at, well, maybe the government, it's just kind of getting away from them now. And this is like damage control.
Right.
But if we look at it from the other side, like they are starting to slowly release it. Like maybe you look at it like it's been too hard. We've been covering it up so long. If we want it to get out now, we have to kind of do it slowly or it gets too weird. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't do a complete 180. Like to me, it's still pretty open compared to how we've been. Things are pretty open, right? Like how did those Navy files get out? I don't even understand the 3 Navy videos.
I mean, they released them. So I don't understand why they would.
Right.
You know?
Unless you were trying to get at something.
Right.
So, at the time they were like, oh, maybe it was Hunter's laptop. They just needed a big story. Like, do something. I don't care. Aliens, whatever. Joe probably was like, just do something. I don't care. And they were like, all right, he said aliens. Let's do it. And they went in and, I mean, that could be. Now, what if aliens have been working with our government or even possibly telling our government what to do behind the scenes? And they're kind of like, all right, it's starting to get away from us. We're going to have to like ease people into this. So they always say there'd be mass panic. If we knew about aliens, there'd be mass panic.
Right. But if there's all this stuff that came out.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yeah, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, whatever.
Who cares? Nobody even
seen this girl.
Nobody even paid attention.
Down and I don't need aliens,
Yeah. No.
I don't think there would be the mass panic. Unless, I mean, what do you think would happen? Like Independence Day or movies like that. If like a big ship or even way back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that big ship hovered over the mountain, or Independence Day, something hovered over the Pentagon or the White House.
The Earth stood still.
Right. Yeah. Any of those. If a ship showed up and nothing happened and it just stayed there, what would people do? Would they care?
I think there'd be like a lot of news stories and stuff about it.
And then we'd get tired of it. If it went
24 hours, dude, it would be different.
Like,
said something crazy, like, whatever. A million other things happen. And people just move on to the next thing. It's no big deal anymore. I mean, we see shit, videos of stuff in the sky all the time. And everyone's like, yeah, okay. I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah. So it's more and more, you think we've kind of just accepted it. And now there was another theory. There's a book that came out in 2023. So not that long ago, Serge Monast, the guy's a Canadian investigative journalist. So right there, you kind of discredit him a little bit.
Right. Yep.
Like if they didn't lose you at Canadian, they lost you at investigative journalist, it could go either way. But so this guy, he's got a book. You can buy it on Amazon. It's out there, and it's called The Blue Beam Project. All right. Mm-hmm. And he postures 4 different like stages of how things will play out as far as like aliens. All right. Mm-hmm. And his theory is that it's kind of like a CIA cover story kind of thing. Like it's not even really aliens. So work with me here. So basically a new age religion, this is what his book postures, is the very foundation of the new world government, without which the dictatorships of the new world is completely impossible. So what's going to happen is Project Blue Beam Project is what he calls it. And it has 4 steps. So I don't want to get them wrong. So I'm going to read them. I know it's a little crazy, but they're pretty crazy. So they'll keep you guessing. A reevaluation of archaeological knowledge. Basically, he suggests that things like HAARP and things like that would cause earthquakes. Mm-hmm. And then artifacts are just going to pop up. And look, it turns out we were wrong about religion the whole time. Mm-hmm. Right. So that way they can kind of shape it into whatever they want it to be. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, a great space show with 3-dimensional optical holograms. And this could be either like a big projection of God in the sky or some kind of thing that we believe, like aliens, kind of like whatever. And they were talking about craziness. Like he goes deep into, it could be like Christian people will see Jesus and Muslims will see Muhammad, and everybody sees what they want to see, right? And then kind of like merge them all into one. Then phase 3, two-way electronic telepathic communication. So this is like why we needed all the 5G antennas set up around, because that's the one that like the frequency is pretty close to your brain waves and they can, direct beam thoughts right into your head. So it'd be like you're hearing from God directly, Kevin.
I like it.
This is where your tinfoil hat might actually be a good idea. Yeah.
Might be time.
Like, I should have been wearing the foil hat and then I wouldn't hear this crazy stuff. All right. And then 4, supernatural manifestations by electronic means, tricking mankind to believe that a UFO invasion is coming, spreading high frequency waves over the earth in abundance, putting integrated chips on every individual. And that's how they bring kind of the new world order, right? That's how it all happens. So that's, hey, that's an option. Now,
that's the best theory I've heard so far.
All right. So the Y-Files kind of thing, the guy dug into that one and he talked about it. And his theory at the end was like, well, there also was like a Star Trek episode that was like exactly that same plot that came out before this guy's book.
Right.
So, but hey, just because it's out there, does that mean it's not true?
It's in the zeitgeist now, man.
Exactly. Once
it's out
there, just because you think they're after you or out to get you, Kevin, it doesn't mean they're not. They're always watching. Now, I don't know. I mean, what's your take on that? I have one more theory that I want to go down.
Let's talk about investigating, like maybe they're getting involved with this. The government is, because this means that there's actual potential threats. Like there's an actual danger to aircraft, to, people. We had talked about the nuclear weapons, but I mean, there's been a lot of, speculation and talk about them showing up around nuclear power plants and missile silos and things like that, deactivating missiles and things like that. But I mean, it seems to me that if that was actually the case and these things were actually happening, you'd want to look into it, right? If you don't know why it's happening.
Are you really protecting us if you don't dig to the bottom of it?
You know what I'm saying? Are you really doing anything? But I mean, also at the same time, like Edward Snowden came out and warned us that the government was spying on us, and they're like, "No, prison, get him, kill him." And Julian Assange came out, and he was in prison for 5 years. Like maybe it's better to just everybody shuts the fuck up and just listen to your government. Otherwise, you're going to be in prison, and don't look into any of this stuff any further.
Right.
Stay in your lane.
The thing is, like, eventually it gets out of your control, right? Like, what if it gets too far away from you? Where
I've heard 10, 20 different people that have come out and said like wild stuff. Like this is coming out because this is like gonna come out whether the government lets it out or not.
Right.
Like, and I heard it, by 2023, February 2023, all this information is going to come out. And then it was 2024. And now it's 2025. All this information is going to come out. But they keep saying it's the same people that just keep saying it that are keep being wrong. So, I don't know.
It's kind of like the 80s and 90s. There were always all the prophets, kind of the Christian guys who are like, yep, this is going to happen.
The end of the world is coming.
Hagen, and there were a bunch of guys that back in the day that were like, yeah, it's going to happen. And
the rapture,
the Antichrist. And I already know, I have insider knowledge.
You remember? And there's been several times where they came up with like hard dates and like time of day, and then they came and went, and they came up with another date, Like, dude, if you're wrong once, that's it, man.
Yeah.
You know, God doesn't use prophets that are wrong.
Yeah, it's
If
kind
you
of
believe in that stuff,
they don't get it wrong. So,
if you get it wrong once, and I think you're 100% right. Follow the money. That's what all of that stuff is about.
Yeah, well, I like money. I mean, if I could give you some insight, that would. But I can't sell it, right? If I don't believe something, or at least question or ponder, like here, I tell you where I'm at, right? But I can't sell it with a straight face. Like, that's why I'm just like the bad salesman guy. So I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if you got money, this is cool, but
right.
Maybe you should just spend your money on getting out in the woods and having a good time. I don't know. But, and yet I still buy things. So I don't know what's right. Well, what's your take before I go down this next road? What's your take on aliens? What do you think they are? Do you think there's UFOs and aliens?
Right.
So
obviously
they're seeing things, right?
Yeah.
There's lights and ships in the sky.
Obviously, there are UFOs or UAPs. There's unidentified things in the air that I don't know that anybody really knows exactly what they are. Aliens, I mean, there's millions of stars and in billions of galaxies.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, intelligent life somewhere? Yeah, probably. Is it here, though? That's the big question, I don't know. But I'm not going to, if I ever get abducted, I'll let everybody know. But a lot of people have been abducted and told everybody, and we're all like, they're crazy people, And are they? Probably. They probably are crazy. There's probably a lot of crazy people out there that say and see a lot of crazy things. But
that actually goes
them.
Right to my next theory. No, I'll dig into what I believe here in a minute, but what you're saying actually fits my next theory. Is so in the Bible they have the rapture, right? You know about that?
Mm-hmm.
Where they basically Jesus comes back for the saints, I guess is how you'd posture it. In the Bible, in Thessalonians, it says, "For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words." Now, the idea is, what if the alien stuff they're trying to set up for, if that happened and you had all the Christians disappear,
right?
Government's got to be like, you don't want to, you got to deal with, you got to get ahead of it.
Yeah, I feel like though, and that this is like a legitimate theory that, is just as believable as everything else we've been talking about.
Exactly. That's the thing is, and even if, right. Cause I know some people get offended when you bring up religion and Christianity and this and that, but even if that's not really going to happen, there are people in power that believe it's going to happen.
Right.
And that they have to get ahead of it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
right? They're not Christians, a lot of the people that are in power, but they feel like they need to have a cover story in case that happens, because they kind of go the other way on that. Like there's good and there's bad. And so obviously people in government would be on the bad side.
But if they're not Christians, why would they think the rapture is going to happen?
No, they believe the Bible. They just don't follow Jesus.
Like devil worshipers.
Devil. Yeah, about. Now you're getting it. Because Satanists. When you think of politicians, do you not think devil worshipper?
I mean, if anyone's made a deal with the devil, look at Congress. That's where they are. Look at the Senate.
In the Bible, do they not call Satan the father of lies?
Mm-hmm.
When you think of a politician, are you
there? You go, man.
That sounds like his children there, right?
Now, one of the since you bring this up, one of the other things that I've heard in the message boards in the deep holes of the internet is that a lot of the people that are covering up these alien encounters are hyper religious.
Oh,
like super religious Mormons and super religious Pentecostal Christians, evangelicals, and they are fully convinced that these aliens that are, contacting everybody are actually demons trying to like trick. So you don't want to interact with them.
No,
you know what I mean? Like interacting with them in any way is like,
well, Hollywood,
unchristian, and you got to protect people from them.
Yeah. Hollywood always had the movies where you were getting like beamed up and, the aliens were just, sucking you up through the thing. I seem to remember the Marvin the Martian kind of thing. And they had a spaceship and it just sucked up, Bugs Bunny or whatever.
Sucking up cows, all sorts of stuff. I
tried to find the picture and I couldn't find it. So it could be one of those, what did they call it? Where you remember something that didn't really happen. But that's, the something effect, the guy, Nelson Mandela effect there. Right. Where, so I don't know, but I think of like Independence Day. I mean, that was like a laser beam that kind of shot down.
They weren't sucking anybody up, but
Hollywood kind of that image in your mind of beams.
There was that movie Fire in the Sky where he got sucked up in the beam. And that was based on a true story, according to the guy that was sucked up. So
now, like, we could even go like one further. Now this is going to full on crazy town, and hey, I'm there, right? I'm in crazy town. So the Bible described there was actually in Ezekiel, they talked about the cherubim, the angels would like rise up and they moved, throughout, and they had they flew through the sky basically, and they had wings and rose from the ground with wheels that didn't leave their side, like a flying chariot, I guess is how people interpret it. And, there's some crazy stuff out there. Now, another thought, work with me. Now, so if somebody was to say that they were demons and angels, because, right, God created the universe, right? The heavens and the earth. I think the Hebrew word was like universe is the same for that. And so God creates all this. So who's to say that these beings aren't the angels and demons and the angels that were cast out, right? I think that's where they're going with this. Now, remember early on in Genesis, they talked about the Nephilim and how they came into the daughters of man, right? You've heard that kind of story. And so they talk about that kind of thing. And when we hear UFO stories, remember, people are always like, yeah, I think they took my semen and I think they impregnate people. Is it not the same thing? You see?
Yeah. It's all through Greek history, right? Perseus and Hercules. They're all like kids of gods that were just like blowing the backs out of chicks in ancient Athens. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what's going on, but there's definitely a lot of stories. It's not like, history is riddled with that sort of stuff of chicks getting banged by gods and having like demigod babies, but to me, that's always just like weirdos that are like super into like pervy stuff and just their minds get out of control and they just, I'm gonna write this down. I gotta get this out.
I have a plan.
It's been happening. Yeah. It's been happening, for millennia, but
I think cause a lot of the theories now, seem to go with, they always say, oh, well, they defy the laws of physics and they whatever. And a lot of the people kind of posture that they are interdimensional, right? Or that they're on another plane. Right. And I think that's where you're starting to get a lot more of the angel demon kind of thing coming in.
Right.
Because they're just like in a different plane and I'm just postulating.
One of the theories is that when a nuclear explosion happens, it interacts with those alternate dimensions. And that's why they're trying to shut them down and keep them from going off and keeping tests from happening, because it's causing damage in the alternate dimensions. Now, I'm too stupid to really understand the whole, 5, 10 dimensions or whatever their, string theory is saying there is. But what if string theory is just a bunch of bullshit? Because they haven't come up with any answers. Yeah, they're the most brilliant people that have come out of any university in the last 20 years have been focusing on this string theory. And what if it just doesn't lead to anything? Like, what do you come up with so far? Like, have you figured anything out? Because it just seems like a lot of math for no reason.
Kevin, math is fun.
What's the solution? What's the answer?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. It's all kind of crazy out there. And that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I think it's as likely not, to use the words of the VA. It's as likely not that it's demons and angels as it is extraterrestrial beings.
Right. Well, I mean, you've got, alternate dimensional aliens, right? Like coming over. You've got, maybe it's aliens from a different star that just like came over here, what? There's a million possibilities of what this could be. And we've never even seen one of these things.
Well, and that's I think
one of the beings is what I'm saying.
Right. And that's kind of what it comes down to is, so there are all these possibilities, but science completely is like, nope, there's nothing here. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not looking at it. It's all fantasy. That's not real. Those people are crazy. So we haven't even considered these ideas from a scientific or logical perspective. And even if people who are intelligent and, smarter than you and me are having ideas about this, they're afraid to come forward and say something.
Right.
Because they'll just be labeled as crazy.
Right. And I keep seeing physicists saying that, these guys are saying they defy physics, but
you must not understand.
What are we talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Let us see what you've got, and then the physicists will decide if it's, but they don't have any physicists on it, or at least that we know of. We don't know what the government's doing. And I guess, we just pay for it, and just, you do whatever you want with our money, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I don't know. I think we got a lot here to digest, Kevin. Yeah. That's what I get to say. Like I'm always afraid to do the alien one, but I feel like we dove a little deeper today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you had mentioned you had kind of gone over as like earthquakes, causing earthquakes and finding like stuff, but people have said that some of these crafts that they have, if they have them, came from like archaeological digs. Like they've been there for thousands of years and they just dug them up.
Well, and there's the new stuff of everything coming. They're just living in the ocean.
Right. That's a big one now.
There's a lot of things going on here that, it's possible. But I like that we think everything just comes from us.
Right.
Like if it didn't come from Earth, it doesn't really count. There might be aliens, but it's really more likely that it's just right here because it's really about us.
Right. Well, I think it's, there's a possibility that they've just been in the oceans forever.
Yes.
They're not coming from anywhere else at all. They've just been here and they're just another thing that we don't know about.
Oh, but definitely something to ponder. So that's what I got today. Kevin, I like it. So with that, you guys have questions, concerns, thoughts, things you want to hear about, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Otherwise, I'd say stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.